Owl Labs brings more innovation to video conferencing. That's our Techstination. I'm Fred Fishkin. Joining us is co-founder and Chief Development Officer Max Makeev. Hi, Max.
Hey, Fred. Pleasure to be here.
Great to see you. And Owl Labs is the maker of the first AI-powered 360-degree video conferencing solution with the Meeting Owl. It can sit on a conference room table and automatically focus on whoever is speaking with video and sound, and it's really remarkable. Now comes something called the Owl Bar, and it isn't for serving drinks during those long meetings. Tell us what this is all about, the how and the why and the need, Max.
Yeah, although what you just said made me think maybe we should put a gimlet inside of the packaging uh, for our customers. So yeah, it's a great new innovation, and I'm really thrilled to be here to share with your audience what it is and why we pursued it. So maybe I'll start with the problem before I talk about the solution. Yeah, so for anybody that's ever been on the video call, you dial into a room, and oftentimes what you see is this sort of fly on the wall view of the room, or you see a bowling alley view of the room, and more or less you're capturing the entire room, and so that's beneficial to the person joining the call. And what you find during the call is that when folks in that room are addressing you, when they're looking at the television set, you get this fairly decent view of the person speaking, and you get to see their body language and that kind of thing. But when they start to look away from the TV and they start to address anybody else in that room, you're seeing the side of their face, you're seeing the back of their head. And in a world where hybrid is sort of the new normal, you want to provide an equal seat at the table to those remote participants. So front of the room bars tradition that are available in the market just can't do that. And there's a lot of options out there for purchasing front of the room devices, but they still can't see through you. They still can't rotate you when you're looking away from the camera. And this was our opportunity. We thought a little bit differently about the problem and how we might be able to solve it. And so we released the Owl Bar, which is packed with a whole ton of our intelligence, but it has a unique feature where it can actually pair with the Meeting Owl in the room, and they can, between them, decide what is the best angle at any given time to capture the person or the people speaking. And then they work together seamlessly to composite an output that makes a lot of sense for that remote person dialing into the call. And then they broadcast it faithfully over Zoom or Hangouts or GoToMeeting, all the video conferencing platform providers. So the Owl Bar, it works great as a standalone device if that's what you prefer. And of course, for companies who want to deliver that high quality, engaging hybrid experience, they would purchase the Owl Bar with a Meeting Owl, have them work together to provide that complete experience for the remote participants that aren't in the room.
Technically, it would seem you have so many issues to overcome here, that shifting to the quickly from speaker to speaker in a room. And I guess it can really be tough if more than one person is trying to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. So quality is critical. You know, one of the things we've always thought about when we started the company was that if we ever got to a place where we could have our devices in conference rooms, now we're sitting in the middle of the most important conversations, the conversations that drive your business forward. And so in order to deliver high quality, you can't create an experience with this camera person that's sitting inside of our products that is nauseating. Too much switching, too much tracking. It becomes burdensome, and remote participants will naturally ask that they shut off that Meeting Owl and switch to something more static. So we had a pretty high bar that we set for ourselves, and we know how to write that software. And we've been doing that for 6 years. So here we are now with Owl Bar coming to market. We're actually taking this foundational work that we've done, and we're repurposing it for the front of the room camera. That's one. The second thing is, during the pandemic, we launched a feature into the Meeting Owl called Owl Connect. And this was actually the first time that you can wirelessly pair two Meeting Owls together in a room to cover more spaces. So a single owl is great for small and mid-sized rooms. If you have larger conference rooms, just put two on the table, they'll wirelessly connect. And my point there is that we've actually had this version of software deployed and field tested for now approaching 3 years. The one idiosyncrasy that we couldn't address with two meeting owls on the table is the one where the local person looks at the television set and the owl in the front of the room switches to them. The person has this sense of discomfort, like, should I look at the owl or should I look at the TV when I'm addressing the remote person? And this is enough of a signal that told us that, hey, we should actually solve this by building the owl bar, because folks never really wonder where to look when the camera is below or above the TV, but somehow they feel this bit of friction when there's an owl. Not everybody, but some. They feel a bit of friction when there's an owl towards the front of the room. And we said, okay, well, we've got this great software. It's working quite nicely in the field. Customers rave about it. I have pictures people send me from their board meetings where they have multiple owls on the table. They just love it. And so we think that we can enter this commodity market with a unique value proposition that actually makes a lot of sense. And when folks see the demonstration, they'll just be blown away, and they'll get it right away, because now more than ever, they have that empathy for what it's like to be a remote person. Before the pandemic, only some of your meetings were video. After the pandemic, nearly every one of your meetings is on video. You will be that person on the remote end, and you deserve a high quality experience. You have a lot of empathy for it. And this is what we provide. And we provide that with the stable software we've had deployed for, now 6 years starting with the original meeting owl.
Just terrific. Now, there are some really high-end specs in the Owl Bar, as far as the cameras are concerned. Tell us about it.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're definitely stepping up our game. First and foremost, if you are using the Owl Bar as a standalone device, it has a fairly wide field of view, 114 degrees. So you put it underneath your television set, let's say, it'll cover the entire room. There's a 30 megapixel image sensor that sits behind that lens. So that's super high resolution. And with our intelligence and the intelligent cropping, we're able to take that information in the room, show you the right thing at the right time, and output a 4K video stream. So it's essentially everything you want to see in a modern device. And then, of course, we've got this amazing software that does two things. One, it can network with an owl, so you can have that full coverage of the room and the right angle at the right time. It also continues to build on this idea that we push software updates regularly to our products to make them better and better. So you get that as just a part of being in the Owl Labs club, if you will, with our product. So super high end, a lot of great innovation that came into it, both hardware and software. And the great thing is that it's a wonderful price. It's $2,000. If you pair the meeting owl with that front of the room device, you've outfitted your entire space for $3,000. It's an amazing value and an amazing experience.
For what the companies or even small offices, I guess, would get in return for this. And I suppose there are other use case scenarios too that maybe some might come to mind. Education for one, I suppose, would be another.
Yeah, we've the way I think about these devices and sort of how we go about developing the software and the hardware is they're starting to become more like Lego pieces. And it's difficult to anticipate all the different use cases. So for example, one use case that comes to mind was when we launched the second generation meeting owl, we put a quarter 20 screw hole at the bottom of it. And what we found was that customers were actually taking the owl and mounting it upside down from their ceiling. And they asked us if we could just flip the video output for them. So we wrote the software that did that. And it was a really interesting use case. So on this Lego pieces metaphor, if you have a odd space, if you have a auditorium, you need certain camera perspectives and certain locations, now you can truly start to outfit and build out that space the way you want it to be represented. And the device, it just figures out naturally how to show the right thing at the right time. And so absolutely, education is a great use case. Universities have always loved meeting owls. The pairing functionality is great. You can imagine it being deployed into all hands meetings to give you greater coverage, especially around Q&A. We've seen conferences where they're set up like U-shaped tables where people are seated around and multiple owls are deployed to be able to cover that bigger space so that you can see the person asking questions as well as the speaker who's providing answers. A lot of unique niche use cases that can be addressed now with this type of technology that we're deploying to the marketplace.
So what are you seeing today, Max, when it comes to the continuing need for video conferencing solutions? I guess for the most part, most companies and individuals are thinking, well, the pandemic is for the most part behind us.
Yeah, the pandemic is behind us, but the thing that's changed is our behaviors. So we are, and it's just natural, it's rational that I think one observation I made when I quit my job and started Owl Labs was that remote work really does work. This was back in 2014. We were all along building these behaviors where we were going to the cloud and using cloud-based tools in our day-to-day work. It's just that we had this inertia of driving in our car to the office and sitting there and, you know, sort of still acting as if we were in a paper-based economy, even though we're in the digital economy. And then the pandemic comes along and it really was the forcing function to, and in that moment, everybody thought, whoa, how are we going to function? How is the business going to move forward? Collectively, we thought this. And then I think very quickly, everyone realized, whoa, we've already got the tools that let us work remotely. We just haven't really been using them in this way. And so rationally, we end up in the place now post-pandemic where employees can have a greater work-life balance. I think rationally, you would expect to have the office be generally more or less in high utilization Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, but for obvious reasons, Monday and Friday, probably not so much. And the big factor here is that we went from a world where we used to have some of our calls on video to a world where now it's rare that you don't have a video component in your meeting. So as a result, you know, the software's there, all that software infrastructure is great. It's easy enough to start your next video call that's highly reliable. But the hardware really needs to be able to capture the right thing at the right time, the right scene in the right moment, so that if you can't be physically in the room, it's the next best thing to being there. And we have a lot of empathy for that need because now we know what it's like to be the remote person since we have the option to be remote. And therefore, you really value the hardware that's in the room that's bringing you to that meeting in a way that because you can't be there physically. And you will value that hardware that much more when it's actually able to act as if like a personal director, making sure that the right scene is being represented at the right time, the right people are being captured and brought in and out of the conversation as they enter and leave the conversation, or the right framing is happening as the conversation volleys back and forth across the table. These are real use cases that just a dumb camera is unable to capture and represent. So the technology, the software is there and it's moving really fast. The hardware is getting there, but I believe that we're leading the charge. You know, from my point of view, when we launched the original Meeting Owl in 2017, at that time, you know, your option was for something that was inclusive, that didn't put a burden on the people in the room to steer the camera, was either you buy a Meeting Owl or you buy essentially a Logitech with a remote control. Over the next few years, what you found is that the entire industry started to move towards more intelligence in their devices. I'd like to believe that we were a big part of kind of forcing the attention and creating that center of gravity that brought these incumbents along. And I believe that with the introduction of the Owl Bar and this idea of automation, the idea of distributed intelligence for the benefit of that remote employee is going to continue to be something that the industry moves towards. The benefit of customers coming along with our technology is that we're compounding the gains we've been building on for years. We have high quality software that's been deployed in the field. We have a really strong sense of duty to continue to listen to our customers and push software updates out for free to improve the experience as we learn about maybe gaps in the software we've delivered or features that need to be deployed to further enhance the experience. All that's just available. And I think we're compounding the advantage that we have. We are starting from a high quality place with the Owl Bar, and the customers are going to love it when they buy it. And I think the industry will continue to move in our direction, but there are a few steps behind.
One of the things I guess that's in your favor is the economics here. I mean, when it comes to travel, for instance, bringing people in remotely, not only a lot cheaper, but it's just so much more convenient, period.
No, I think you're right. And, we're entering travel is always expensive. And of course, I don't want to deny the fact that seeing people face to face, it is really the best experience. I mean, in the limit, I'd love to say that we're working on teleporting technology so we can solve that problem ultimately. But it is expensive, and we're in sort of, I think, given where the economy is going these days, where everyone is in a bit of a belt tightening mode. But at the same time, they're also in catch-up mode. Only 10% of all meeting spaces are wired for video conferencing, and there's 90 million of those spaces in the world. So it's a huge market opportunity, but it's also a huge expense. So it's certainly more affordable, I'd say, to be able to outfit spaces with video conferencing equipment than to bring in teams of people on flights and pay for hotels and that kind of thing, as well as the sort of friction of just lost time associated with the travel. At the same time, it's going to be really expensive to outfit these spaces too, and companies still have to do that because obviously the market hasn't really caught up yet. I would like to say that if you look at our solutions, we've always been focused on providing high value at a fair price. And I'd like to believe that we also provide a pretty good compelling economic story to future customers, particularly with this front and center solution, which continues to be provided at a super value. So you're right. I think there's a lot of opportunities for customers to save on costs. I don't want to be presumptuous and tell them, they get a better ROI with hardware. But I do believe that everybody sort of understands on some level that there's plenty of meetings where a flight doesn't make sense, but you still want to have a high fidelity conversation. And this is where technology like the kind that Owl Labs provides will be helpful.
Terrific. Well, the website is owllabs.com, spelled just like it sounds. Max Makeev, thank you for spending time with us.
That's a pleasure. Thank you so much for having us.